Well, as it turns out, everyone did a quick exodus from Action Jackson. Was that also the case with Exodus Gods and Kings? Let's find out.
Director Ridley Scott retells an epic Old Testament tale in Exodus, Gods and Kings, the story of one man's daring courage to take on the might of an empire. Using state-of-the-art visual effects and IMAX 3D, Scott brings new life to the story of the defiant leader Moses, essayed by Christian Bale, as he rises up against the Egyptian pharaoh Ramses, played by Joel Edgerton, setting 600,000 slaves on a monumental journey of escape from Egypt and its terrifying cycle of 10 deadly plagues.
Frankly, Fahad, while I was watching this film, and of course it's a very long film, I realized that as times have changed and technology also changes, I think the stories that we love remain the same. Now, this is an old biblical story that I'm sure would be told back in the day in the form of books or perhaps verbally. About a few centuries ago, it would be in theater. About a century ago, it would have come to cinema. Right now, it's come to IMAX with 3D. But at the end of the day, the resonance will have to be the same. The characters will have to be the same. This is Ridley Scott working on perhaps one of the oldest stories ever told. He does a fair job of it, but how much can you reinterpret something that's been told again and again? And I was just looking at some of those modern reinterpretations. The first one, of course, is the fact that you see some of the characters, being tinkered with just a little bit. So, for instance, when Moses is talking to God, it turns out it could be that it's hallucination rather than God himself. But then there are other things which go on the side of ludicrous or ridiculous if you're not an American or a Brit, is when you hear these accents play out. When you hear this, mix and match of American and Brit accent, in a film. Set, at a time far, far away. And the other one, of course, is when we stepped out. And remember, we were speaking to a lady who was watching the film with us, and she kept saying she kept seeing Fab India clothes all across her. But these are liberties that Western filmmakers have always taken. No knock on that. I think my problem with the film was I wasn't getting engaged with the story itself.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because I found there was great economy with which, even though it's a 2.5-hour long film, Ridley Scott just takes you straight into Moses as a general in the Pharaoh's army. He's the favored son of, even though he's technically not the Pharaoh's son. And then it just sort of takes you from there. And for Moses to find out that he is indeed, Hebrew and not Egyptian, the revelation, and then so it's really a very, very, I thought, tightly paced in that sense. Obviously, the main thing, the big controversy in this film, apart from the casting, is the fact that God is depicted as a 10-year-old boy with a Pakka British accent. So it's kind of really interesting, and I'm sure it's going to be so divisive. But I really enjoyed that casting, because I think that kind of vengeful God with a certain amount of immaturity, without compassion, is an Old Testament thing. And our notions of God as a benign, benevolent creature, a creator, are turned on its head with this. So to have an impulsive 10-year-old boy playing God is a very clever thing. I would have loved to see a 10-year-old girl as God.
Well, from discussing God, we get on straight to discussing the oh my God moments from this film. For me, it's very easy to tell exactly what those moments were. And those were really the moments of destruction in this film, Fahad. I think the way, they envelop your senses purely because of the size of the screen. The maggots, the frogs, the flies, the crocodile, the pool of blood.
Yes.
I think you just feel repulsed by what you see on the screen. And perhaps that is really how it must have been imagined, or perhaps it must have been written. But beyond those technical wizardries, as it turns out, in terms of creating another world, I wasn't taken in by the scale per se, purely because I guess I wasn't getting drawn into the story itself.
Well, I think you also reached late, as you seem to be doing this week, because there was a fantastic battle scene that I know you missed, and I really wish at some point you will see it. Beautifully mounted, and I think it gives you that sort of edginess which he brought to Gladiator. So in terms of having these biblical epics, but doing it the way that Ben-Hur had that famous chariot race, I mean, that kind of really cutting edge, using technology, using camera techniques, just being able to do that is really the work of a master craftsman. And I think Ridley Scott is certainly that. Without further ado, let's get on to our verdict of Exodus, Gods and Kings.
Well, I think the big paradox so far as this film is concerned is, where do you recommend people to watch it? It has to be watched in IMAX because it's really been made for that format. It's huge, it's technically brilliant. I think the story being told is being told only because there is a master director at work, but the story itself is rather boring so far as I'm concerned. So therefore you should watch it on TV. So it's a tough call so far as recommending this movie is concerned. There's no doubt about it. It's a good film, it cannot be dismissed, but I think I'll still go with TV.
Well, there's absolutely no confusion in my mind. This film must be watched on the big screen, IMAX, 3D. This is pure spectacle, and I think Ridley Scott is the true successor to Cecil B. DeMille and the Ten Commandments.
Well, that's it, guys. That was Friday Double Bill for you. Tell us what you thought of the movies. Tell us what you think of the show.